Just when you thought Paul Manafort couldn't be more of a liar, he is. Did the Justice Department seriously consider calling President Trump's cabinet together and try to remove him from office? Is Michael Cohen ever going to testify before Congress? William Barr is about to become the new Attorney General. Do we have any idea if he's going to fire Mueller? Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker says the Mueller probe is finishing up. When can we read it? Or will we be able to read it? Here to make sense of all this is Jackie Schechner. She is the editor-in-chief of the Committee to Investigate Russia, investigaterussia.org. Jackie Schechner, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Bless your soul. Before we get started, let me once again tell everyone to go to investigaterussia.org. They've been on top of this story since Nicholas and Alexandra were taking orders from Rasputin. This is you. I mean, you were before we even knew about the Russia probe. You were
we started this effort in the summer of 2017, and we launched the site in September. And the idea was just to create an aggregator because there's so much news and so much information that it's hard to keep everything straight. And there's so much other stuff going on at the same time. But we wanted to aggregate the news so people understood what was going on and hopefully also elevate it so that it got the proper attention, because this is a huge national security issue. And people need to understand that it's not partisan. This isn't about Republicans or Democrats, even though it feels that way at times, because there are many Republican members of Congress who are not willing to stand up to this president when they should be. But the idea is to help people to understand what the national security implications are of a president who likes to make nice with Vladimir Putin.
That is correct. It is your one-stop shop for all your Russian collusion needs.
And let's actually collude. We're not doing any collusion.
And they have a donate button, and everybody should go there. 2019 is barely 2 months old, and we've seen massive layoffs at BuzzFeed and several other media outlets. We need a free and open press, so everybody should support investigaterussia.org. Jackie, it's getting so bad I hear my favorite newspaper, the National Enquirer, may be going out of business.
What will they put by the checkout counter in grocery stores?
Well, let's talk about Jeff Bezos. The National Enquirer exposed his extramarital affair. He exposed his penis, and the Enquirer threatened to show those selfies unless he told the world that the original story about his cheating had nothing to do with politics. From day one, I've been told that the Stormy Daniels story, the payoff, the catch and kill that the National Enquirer does for Donald Trump, I was told that would be the end of the Trump administration, not collusion. Everyone has told me that when you crack the relationship between the National Enquirer and Donald Trump, you will bring down his presidency. Do you subscribe to that?
No, because it doesn't seem at this point that there's much that's going to bring it down. I'm hopeful. It's really disturbing. I'm hopeful that there will be a point where Republicans say enough is enough, because as long as they control the Senate, they have the power to keep him in office. I'm very pleased with the strength with which the Democrats in the House have come out and said, look, we're going to do our oversight. And I know that there has been some attempt by the Trump associates, his team, his messaging machine, to brand oversight as overreach. But it is, in fact, congressional oversight. It's what the congressional members of Congress are supposed to do. That's what the branch of government is supposed to be doing. And I hope that they will continue to do it. It is frustrating that it's not also happening in the Senate. But the fact that it isn't is what leads me to believe that there's very little that will take this president down, and that's frightening.
Yeah. What about Richard Burr? He's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. He, for the past year, seemed like an honest interlocutor, but now he's saying there's no evidence of collusion.
Yeah, that's a weird. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. It's a weird declaration, and I'm not sure why he felt compelled to do it. Because, first of all, the Senate Intelligence Committee is not done. with this investigation. They still have more people that they want to interview. Vice Chairman Mark Warner, the ranking Democrat on the committee, has said, we have drawn different conclusions based on the evidence before us. The House Intelligence Committee Chairman, Adam Schiff, says, look, that's not what we found. And we all know that no matter what Congress finds, Mueller's got 10 times that. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what the benefit of that was, especially since the Senate Intelligence Committee was the last bastion of bipartisanship that we could see. It doesn't seem to serve any purpose other than to give the president something to jump off of, to say, look, they said no collusion. But there does seem to be a tremendous amount of evidence that there was, in fact, an intention to conspire. There was, in fact, collusive activity. There seems to be plenty of circumstantial evidence showing that there were members of the Trump orbit, if not the president himself in some capacity, calling on Russia to hack his opponent, his son willing to accept dirt on Hillary Clinton, Roger Stone, his longtime political advisor, reaching out to WikiLeaks and to Guccifer 2.0. I mean, these are really well-established facts at this point that cannot be what's the word I'm looking for? You can't deny them, mm-hmm. right? I mean, these are things that we know to be the case. So you don't have to be any kind of legal mind to put two and two together at this point and say there's something going on here. Why Burr would say we haven't found it. I mean, basically what Burr said was, and let's be honest here, is we haven't found a direct link. There's no, in the honor of Valentine's Day, there was no, will you be my collusion partner? Check yes, no, maybe. I mean, there was no love note passed, but you weren't going to find that anyway. What you'll find are the emails, the text messages, the correspondence, the WhatsApps, whatever they were using to communicate with each other, the back channels. You'll find that, and the person who's going to find that is Mueller, because he's got the power to dig into that material.
So far, is the Roger Stone indictment the only suggestion of collusion coming out of the Mueller camp?
No. I mean, if you look at what we just found out about Paul Manafort, if he's passing information to Konstantin Kilimnik, his Ukrainian protege, who is largely believed to have ties to Russian intelligence, or he's passing information to Oleg Deripaska, who he's worked with for years and years and years, via Kilimnik. There we've seen evidence that we know, let's put it this way, we know that Manafort's covering up something because we know that he's lied to the special counsel, and he's basically willing to put himself in jail for the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something worth that. What is it that's so important to hide that you're willing to risk going to jail for the rest of your life?
Right, but does that implicate the Trump administration? Because Manafort was only running the Trump campaign for a couple of months.
Yeah, but he continued to stay in touch with the administration afterwards. Rick Gates, who we know is still cooperating because they've yet to set a sentencing date for him, was also on the transition team. There are plenty of indications that there is overlap with the people who were involved in all of this mess. And it may not reach the actual administration in terms of what kind of cooperation there may be, but there certainly seems to be some kind of quid pro quo that is leading the president to do things like asking Comey to go light on Michael Flynn, mm-hmm. or calling Sergei Lavrov and Sergei Kislyak into the Oval Office at Putin's request and telling him now the pressure's off that he's fired Comey. Right. All of the things that he's doing, threatening to pull out of NATO, not declaratively stating that Russia is in fact responsible for hacking our elections, essentially kowtowing to Putin in Helsinki in front of the international press. I mean, all of those things, not implementing sanctions that should be implemented by now under law. All of these things are an indication that Trump owes Putin something, and the question becomes why.
Yeah. If you're Mueller, do you come up with some grand unifying theory of what happened, or do you have to go in and just pick people off crime by crime? And if you have to do it crime by crime, as you said at the top of the segment, I don't think you get rid of Trump. I think he gets reelected.
It's tough to say. It does seem like he's building a case. But again, everything we know, there are 10 layers beneath that.
Yeah.
And We haven't had any serious conversation about Eric Prince and the meeting in the Seychelles. And George Nader is a cooperator, and he's the one who organized that meeting. Prince said that it was, coincidental. He just happened to run into a Russian guy that his Saudi friend said he should talk to, when in fact George Nader set that up, and Nader's been talking to Mueller behind the scenes. We haven't heard anything about that.
Right. That's Betsy DeVos's brother who wants to privatize the military.
Yes, he's the guy that founded Blackwater. It's Betsy DeVos's brother. They're big Trump donors, and he went down to the Seychelles right before the inauguration, had a meeting with some quote-unquote business associates, and then ended up meeting with a Russian hedge fund manager. And he told Congress that was an accidental, like a coincidental thing, not accidental, but coincidental, at a beer, doesn't remember what they talked about.
Right.
And George Nader, who's a Lebanese businessman who does a lot of this coordinating on behalf of the Emirates and other Middle Eastern entities, he has said that he organized that meeting, that it was planned in advance.
And Nader is a convicted child predator?
Yeah, there's that. But you keep in mind, I don't mean to laugh it off, but I need to say that nobody in this investigation is clean. Right. And that's something that we have to keep in mind, is that like attracts like. I mean, these are all shady characters. They all have a bad past, which is why, and I've said this previously, is that Mueller's not going into this, I can guarantee you, with hearsay. He's not going to bring charges based simply on one person's testimony. So what Michael Cohen says matters not because Michael Cohen said it, but because it corroborates what Mueller's already discovered.
Right.
It doesn't matter what Rick Gates says on the surface. It gives investigators a lead to trace, and they can corroborate it. They're not going to go to trial. They're not going to bring a case with information that hasn't then been proven. And I think that that's what people have to remember takes so much time, is that you have to track down the leads. One of the things that Burr did say in the interview, the CBS interview that's been highly cited now, is saying that there's no direct link, is he also said the reason why the investigation has been going on so long is because more people keep popping up. That every time they interview somebody, there's more and more witnesses. And the investigation's gone on longer than he wanted or suspected, because they have to keep pulling at the threads. And every time they pull threads, there's more people they need to talk to, or more documents that they need to retrieve. So that went highly unnoticed, or largely unnoticed, but it's important that we pay attention to that. Is that it's not that there's nothing there. It's that every time they talk to somebody, more there turns up.
Right. And it may not be a massive conspiracy. It just might be a corrupt system of money laundering that spreads across the globe, that's been around for a century. I mean, if you're Mueller, do you start investigating collusion with Saudi Arabia?
Well, I think that you take whatever you stumble upon in that arena and you pass off what you can. I think that's why we're seeing some of these referrals to other district attorneys or attorneys general across the country in different districts, because I think that Mueller has to stay within the parameters of his mandate. Now, look, he's allowed to investigate obstruction of justice. He's allowed to investigate whether there was any collusion between or cooperation between the Russian government and the Trump campaign. He's also allowed to investigate any crimes that emerge from that, right? Anything that comes out of that. So he has the authority to do it. But I think it's in his best interest to keep his parameters on the smaller side and then farm out any information that he thinks may not have an immediate bearing on that task at hand. I think he's going to uncover all sorts of crimes. I mean, the intention on behalf of this administration to play down the Crown Prince's role in the Khashoggi murder tells me that there's a lot going on there financially as well. And I do believe, and have from the beginning, that there's a huge amount of Russian money laundering, that Trump has huge Russian mafia ties, that the oligarchs have saved his behind time and time again, and that Putin's calling in the chips now. And I think that we're going to find out that there is a huge monetary element to all of this, a huge money laundering element to all of this, and that will be the crime, if not a larger election hacking conspiracy.
Do you worry that the Trump scandal has finally exposed the fault line in America between globalism and patriotism, that we've been sold this bill of goods about free trade and moving currency around the globe, and nations don't matter anymore? So if nations don't matter anymore, then patriotism doesn't matter anymore. And I can't help but think that the Trump family has no sense of loyalty to this country because they're dealing on the international stage. Do you worry that the whole system is suspect now? We've all been compromised because we're chasing money that we don't even bother to know where it came from. There are no more patriots in our country.
Well, I don't believe that, actually. I think that the patriots in this country are the national security experts who are screaming from the rooftops. I think the patriots in this country are the members of Congress who are willing to investigate. I think the patriots in the country are the whistleblowers who say they see something going on that's not being investigated properly and should be. I think that there are great patriots who love this country very much. I think the FBI and the Department of Justice are great patriots. I think that what's dangerous is this attack on democracy, the attack on rule of law, the attack on the institutions that make our country great. And I think that that's where the danger lies. I mean, look, President Trump never cared about this country. Donald Trump he never gave to charity. He dodged the draft 5 times. He never served the country in any way. He's never done anything. He's never cared about this country. He pursued financial opportunities all over the world and stiffed the workers here at home. He's importing labor. I mean, this is not, he makes his stuff in China. I mean, this is not somebody who cares about the United States or propping up manufacturing in the United States. He did what he needed to do to get elected. I'm not even sure he wanted the job. He just wanted to win. And he didn't have a change of heart at 70 and decided he all of a sudden wanted to serve his country, right? That's just not the nature of who he is. He's a narcissist who loves money. So to turn around now and think that this man is doing anything to benefit this country or cares about this country is comical. And I think that we are at a point now where we need to look at the very real possibility that we have a Russian asset in the White House, a foreign asset in the White House. Worst case scenario is that. The best case scenario is that we have a raging narcissist who doesn't care about the country and is willing to sell it out to the highest bidder. And I think that's where we are at this point.
It's pretty apparent we have a Russian asset in the Oval Office. And I mean, is Mueller capable? I'm asking you to read tea leaves, but
yeah,
I mean, are we capable as a nation to say, "Wow, look what happened to us"?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if we can conceive of how bad this is, and that's a big problem. I think that people don't realize how bad it is and how large it is. And I think it's going to be very hard for people to wrap their brains around what exactly happened. I think it doesn't make sense if you just step back and you take politics and partisanship out of it and you look at it objectively. The way that Donald Trump and his associates are behaving is not the behavior of innocent people. You don't behave this way. If you're being investigated for something you didn't do, a crime you didn't commit, something that had nothing to do with you, let them do their job. There's no need to interfere. There's no need to attack the investigators. There's no need to try to tear down the DOJ, the FBI. All of this stuff is being done to thwart the investigation. Ask why. If the investigation is going to turn up nothing, if it's a witch hunt, it's a hoax, it's whatever it is, why is the president so hell-bent on trying to discredit it and stop it? And I think that you have to ask yourself logically, is this the way that innocent people behave?
Right.
There is a there. And it's just a matter of time before we see what exactly it is and how much Mueller uncovers. I think there's nobody better you could have put in place to do the job. The more I know about Robert Mueller, the more I read about him, how much he loves this country. This will be his last, I don't say necessarily last, but I think it'll be his last great contribution to this nation that he loves so much and has served time and time again. I mean, there's really no greater disparity than between the character of Robert Mueller and the character of Donald Trump. And you put them side by side and you can see totally two different human beings. And one obviously loves this country and one obviously doesn't care. And that to me is what they're up against.
All this faith in Mueller scares me because he can't help but disappoint. And we have an election coming up. I think the first debates are like 4 months away. And I see a recipe for fascism. The way you speak about Mueller concerns me, and the way I speak about Mueller concerns me, because my side, the liberals, the Democrats, we poo-poo patriotism. And well, we do. The liberals don't wear it on your sleeve. It's like God. It's a personal thing.
I mean, I would just disagree a little bit in terms of, I think that and I'll tell you why. I think that there's an idea of patriotism in a different way, right? You don't have to wave a flag and put an American flag bandana around your head, and I don't think yay America. You don't have to be that kind of patriot. I think wanting everybody to have access to quality, affordable health care is a form of patriotism.
I agree with you. Yeah.
I think that wanting civil rights and equal rights for all is a form of patriotism. I think that getting people access to quality education without going into debt for the rest of their lives is a form of patriotism. Like, wanting this country to be better is a form of patriotism. So I don't necessarily think that there's a sense of like, don't show your patriotism. I think it's how we express our patriotism more so than I think like you're thinking of kind of like the beer swilling middle of the country stereotype, 4th of July, like flag on your truck patriotism. Mm-hmm. And I know that makes me sound sort of coastal elitist. That patriotism tends to not be a progressive patriotism. I would argue that it manifests itself in a different way that shows the love for this country and what this country stands for.
I'm spooked about the presidential election because your definition of patriotism is different from a lot of people's definition of patriotism. There is a divided country right now. That we can't even agree on what is patriotism. I used to think patriotism was loving our government, our founding fathers. Well, now you can't even love our founding fathers. Every institution is now suspect in America. What is the glue that keeps us together? We don't have that glue anymore, and that's a recipe for fascism. You spoke of Mueller. I speak of Mueller. My eyes, are wide-eyed when I speak of Mueller, because we all need something to believe in. And when people don't believe in their government or their institutions, they believe in one man, a savior. We're relying on Mueller. That's a recipe for fascism, because other people will rely on Trump. Do you worry about his fascistic tendencies? Do you think he can exploit our need to believe in one man? If we get, God forbid, a terrorist attack or something, don't you think a lot of Americans are going to look towards Trump the way you and I are looking towards Mueller?
The problem was he's lost all goodwill. You can't believe him. I mean, the man's going to declare a national emergency at the southern border, and it's something that the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, didn't even really mention in his national security threat assessment. I mean, you can't believe him. And that's what's so dangerous at this point, is that everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie, and everything this administration spews is propaganda or disinformation. So if there is a terrorist attack, if there's a real national emergency, we can't look to him because we can't believe him. And so therein lies the danger. I'm not as worried about fascism. Yeah, there's 35% of the country that's still willing to believe in Trump, and that's very dangerous because those who do are fanatical about it. And that, to me, the authoritarianism there, the fascism potential there is very frightening.
Yeah.
I am more concerned about the lack of infrastructure to handle a real national emergency, because the man at the top doesn't care and doesn't have the mental capacity to handle it.
Right.
And most of the grown-ups in the room have left. So I'm concerned that the people we have in charge are not capable of handling any sort of terrorist attack or real national emergency or whatever may happen to come. And it at some point will come, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And we don't have the people or the infrastructure. Nobody good wants to serve in this government for good reason.
Yeah.
So we have to rely on the private sector. We have to rely on the kindness of strangers. We have to rely on our own sensibility. It's going to be a little chaotic until we get things back into place. Mm-hmm. But I do believe if we can get a reasonable person in office, in 2020 and we can do something about this Senate that refuses to hold the president accountable, we can come back to decency.
Right.
That's what I like to believe in, more so than just believing in Mueller.
One of the biggest fools right now is Rudolph Giuliani. He's exposed himself to just be a craven opportunist who will say and do anything. He's always been this way. He was a horrible mayor of New York City. He was a joke. And suddenly 9/11 happens. People who loathed him fell in line. They fell in love.
Didn't he clean up? I mean, he cleaned up Times Square pretty well, and that was kind of a big thing. Obviously there were a lot of civil rights violations along the way, but I think that from a kind of higher brow New York perspective, there was a sense that Giuliani cleaned up the city, and I put that in quotes. You can't see my air quotes, but I was in New York at the time, and there wasn't a hatred for Giuliani. I think he's gone off the rails since he's become a part of this Trump machine. And I don't understand what it is about Donald Trump that turns people into crazy people, or that they're willing to go along with him, because he's not kind. He's not charismatic. He's not charming. He's not interesting. He's not educated. He doesn't carry some sort of wisdom. He's not, there's nothing that I can see there that would take a normal, reasonable person and suck them into the vortex. That's beyond me. I don't see it. So I don't understand why someone like Rudy Giuliani would be compelled to put everything he stands for on the line for this man. There must be something else behind the scenes. It just doesn't make any sense that he's willing to go to these great lengths and risk his own reputation in perpetuity for Donald Trump.
Yeah, before you go, I've followed your Twitter feed, and you have been suggesting that Senator Lindsey Graham, there's some compromise on Lindsey Graham.
There has to be. There has to be something. I don't know what it is. I have my suspicions. I think everybody who knows of Lindsey Graham has the same suspicions. We just don't really talk about it. But I think that there is probably some sort of impropriety in his past that I'm pretty sure he doesn't want to be made public. That would be my guess, and that somebody's got their hands on it, because he's done a complete about face, and he is now slow walking protecting Mueller. He's lashing out at the FBI. He is behaving like somebody willing to protect Trump without taking a look at the cold hard facts, and that doesn't seem to be the legacy that McCain would have wanted for him.
Right.
So if they were truly, in fact, as good of friends as everyone had said they were. So to me, there's got to be another reason. It doesn't make sense that he would do such an about face so quickly and be willing to back up Trump without there being something that's hanging over him.
Do you drink?
Yeah, well, not in excess, but yeah.
Okay, pretend you've had 3 martinis. Okay.
Oh, no. You never say yes to the three martinis.
I want to ask you a question, but you've had 3 martinis. It's the end of the day. Deutsche Bank, I believe, was Trump's only lender, right?
Correct, yes.
And then we discovered that Anthony Kennedy, the Supreme Court justice, has a son, and he worked at Deutsche Bank, and he was lending money to Trump, and then all of a sudden, Anthony Kennedy announces he's retiring. If you add up the people who run Washington, D.C., you got 9 Supreme Court justices and 535 men and women who serve in the House of Representatives and the Senate. So then when you throw in the cabinet, we're only talking about 600 people, right?
Okay.
How hard is it for Putin to find compromise on 600? I mean, just go through 600 yearbooks. You'll find something, right? I could hire a private detective and find something out on you that you don't want anybody to know. How hard is it for a former KGB agent and his minions with billions of dollars at stake? How hard is it for ex-KGB guys to find compromise on 600 people who serve in Washington? I would assume am I being an alarmist? I've just served you 3 martinis.
No, I mean, I think you don't even have to get me drunk to have me admit that. I mean, I think that it's that's one of the fun things about me, is I'll say it sober too. I don't think that there is, I don't think it's that difficult. I mean, look, I like to pride myself on being a pretty good Googler. And I was an investigative reporter, and I can find stuff on anybody, or know, if I can't find it, I know how to find it. If I can do it, I would certainly imagine that Russian intelligence officers can do it. And I think that it's not that difficult. I mean, Rand Paul did an interesting about phase two. I mean, I think it's not hard to pick off who in Washington is likely compromised. Devin Nunes, for example. I'd imagine Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan are standing up for the president. Matt Gaetz. I mean, these people don't defend the president to the extent they do without there being a reason. And so I think we need to be very aware that there may be something incredibly nefarious going on. And if not, then we've got some very stupid people that are serving in our government.
Which brings us back to the National Enquirer. If you're going to if you've got compromise, what better funnel to America than the National Enquirer to release that compromise?
But I don't even know that you need the National Enquirer anymore. That's the crazy thing. So you can put something on the internet now. Like we don't need the gatekeepers anymore. I mean, it's not hard for some sort of information to make its way quickly around the internet.
Right.
So, I think that the National Enquirer doesn't hold the power that it used to, because the tabloids used to get the dirt out. Now you've got other avenues to get the dirt out. It's just not that difficult. So I think that, look, I mean, it's precarious. And I think that the Russians obviously have done their homework on more than just Donald Trump. And I think in a matter of time we'll figure out what it is, or we'll find out a lot of it. The question is whether it's going to matter.
Yeah. And
that's where we're really in a bind at this point, because if the marital infidelity to the extent that he did, if paying off women, if lying about building Trump Tower or trying to build Trump Tower during the campaign, if all of the racial slurs, if all of the both people on both sides, if none of this has stuck, if putting kids in cages, I mean, like, if none of this is stuck, the question becomes, where is the line for the Republican members of Congress who continue to defend him? Where is that? And I don't know that we've seen it yet.
Yeah. Jackie Schechner is the editor-in-chief of the Committee to Investigate Russia. Go to investigaterussia.org. Nobody synthesizes this story better than Jackie Schechner. I'm honored to have you on the show. Can you stand the line for 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
Great.